Hello friends, this is Worm, hot off a spicy Trials weekend, and we are going to focus on Trials today because I was on the forums and I saw an ungodly number of posts referencing Trials of Osiris. I mean, literally, I lost count. I would say I was probably through about a dozen of them when I stopped clicking on them to see what people were complaining about, and I figured we might as well make this Tuesday video about Trials of Osiris and the top 3 complaints that players had for Trials of Osiris in Destiny 2. Of course, if you enjoy this video, subscribe because we just hit 1,000. Thank you guys very much. And we make videos like this all the time. So yeah, go do that. But Trials of Osiris and the complaints that players have. Now, it's no secret that Trials of Osiris is not exactly the most user-friendly mode. It's incredibly difficult, if we're being honest, for average players or below average players to get in there, have fun games, have good games, go to the lighthouse, stuff like that. But there are people who feel like they need to take it upon themselves to go to the forums and complain about things, and I just kind of want to address these things. And the things we're going to talk about in this order are the solo queue / freelance. We're going to talk about matchmaking, and then we're going to talk about the quitter penalties or people leaving games. So, we'll talk about each of those, starting, of course, with freelance / solo queuing. I cannot even remember how many of these posts I saw, how many people were saying that they want freelance back, they want solo queue, you might as well bring freelance back, blah, blah, blah. Look, the reality is Bungie took freelance out of the game because it splits the player base. Because you have people that want to play in teams of 2, for example, they just, a duo, or you have players that, just want to play solo and stuff like that. And you're splitting the player base in half. So if 50% of players in Trials of Osiris want to play as a solo player, they would go join the freelance playlist. This meant that you had to have 3 people. I shouldn't say had to. You really needed 3 people in order to join the Trials playlist, because if you joined the regular Trials matchmaking with only 2 people, you would be stuck there and you would be waiting forever until the servers finally decided to give you a solo player that maybe didn't know that freelance existed or something like that. And that's why they took it out. I think this was a good idea. I think this was the right play by Bungie, because having the player base split so heavily puts a lot of strain on players. My wife and I, we like to play Destiny 2. We could never do Trials back whenever freelance was a thing, because we would join in Trials and we'd wait literally for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and the queue would be at 5 out of 6 because there's 2 of us, 3 on the enemy team, and no solos to come join. Now, if we wanted to, we can go in and we can play as a duo, and it'll match us against another duo and another solo. And I think that Bungie, they handled the matchmaking very, very well. And I know you see posts out there of people talking about how, oh, it's BS, like they got 3 solos against a triple team, or a 3-stack, sorry, triple team. I mean, yes, it happens. It's bound to happen at some point. It's never personally happened to me, but it's bound to happen to somebody at some point. I'm not discrediting that it sucks when that happens, but the reality is that is so rare for that to happen. I mean, as somebody who plays Trials not super frequently, but I play occasionally here and there, I've never encountered a game where it put 3 solos against a triple stack. It's either 2 duo teams again and 2 solos, or it's all solos. I have never actually, in fact, I think in my time in Trials, since they have changed the matchmaking, I don't think I've ever even been against a 3-stack, even as a duo, a solo, myself, and then a 3-stack. I don't think that's ever happened. So Bungie's matchmaking is working. If you are a solo player, you're probably going to get matched with solo players. Like, the probability of that is, I would say, probably 75 to 80%. There's a 75 to 80% chance that you're getting matched with just 5 other solo players. And then the other, 25 to 20%, or I mean, actually, we should probably say 19.999% is going to be a duo and a solo against another duo and another solo. And then that last 0.00001% or whatever is the, 1 in a million game where you get pitted against a 3-stack and you have 3 solos, or maybe you have a duo and a solo. or something like that. And so I think that, yeah, like it sucks when that happens, but at the same time, like get up, dust yourself off, move on. It's not like it's every game, and players are going to the forum and they're complaining like it's every day, every single time they play trials, they get in a situation like this. It's just, that's not what's going on. So that's solo queue and freelance. I do not think that freelance needs to come back to trials. I think that splitting the player base more is just negative for the game all around. But moving on from there, I want to talk about matchmaking, because this was a big one that I saw. I think this was probably like one of the most common posts I saw about was trials matchmaking, and really just Crucible matchmaking in general. Here's the thing about Crucible matchmaking: trials and quick play matchmaking and competitive matchmaking, they are all three their own different formulas and criteria. When you're playing quick play, you are playing with people who are in, within your skill band. And it's a pretty big band. You've got, let's say you're classified as 3 stars. You're playing with people who are anywhere from 1.5 stars to 5 stars, for example, in quick play. Then you go to competitive, and competitive, it tightens that skill band a lot. If you are 3 stars, you're getting matched against anywhere from a 2.75 to a 3.25 stars. It really tightens it because it wants those comp games to be fair. Trials of Osiris, though, has no matchmaking to my knowledge. Trials of Osiris is you're thrown into a game with some random people, and hopefully you get lucky about who's on your team and who's not on your team. This can be a boon or a curse for you. If you are a very low skill player and you jump in the trials playlist, the chances that your teammates are going to be better than you and good, so to speak, is probably pretty high. But if you're a really, really strong, really good player, you've been playing for years, and you join solo, the likelihood that your teammates are going to be worse than you is it's there. It's higher, right? But the thing with trials, and I think that people do have I hate saying like they're right, but I think that there is some merit to this frustration. Without matchmaking, you're literally taking people who might be classified as like 1 stars, for example, in the Crucible, and you're getting put with players who are 4 and 5 stars. You will get players who are a 5-star with 2 1-star teammates against a full team of 3 stars. And in trials, no matter how good you are, the difficulty of winning a game when it's 1v3 is incredibly difficult. Like, no matter how good you are at Destiny, that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. You could take the best Destiny 2 player and put them against 3 of the most average players. Those 3 average players will probably win every single time, especially if there's even a remote amount of knowledge about Trials of Osiris and playing reses and stuff like that. So yeah, matchmaking in trials, it does suck, and I think that it could use some work. I think that it would definitely benefit players in the long run to have a skill-based matchmaking system in trials, because I've been there, man. I've been on the end where I join a team and I get 2 absolutely god tier players, and the enemy team is not god tier. They're maybe average, maybe even below average, and we steamroll through them in 3 minutes, 5 rounds in 3 minutes. Like, it feels good. But I've also been on the receiving end of it, where I am placed in the game. I've got 2 teammates who are far below average, and I've got 3 players on the enemy team who are all either average or better than average, or they're really, really good. And yeah, we lose that game. And it's kind of a mixed bag. And I think that Bungie implementing some type of matchmaking system that focuses on skill would be something that is beneficial. It would lead to less of those smashes, because, man, I mean, the last time I went flawless, I think every game except for my 6th game, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a 5-0 or a 5-1. I mean, it was a smash. It took me like 30 minutes as a solo player to get to the lighthouse. And that's kind of ridiculous. Like, I'm not the most god tier player. I'm not the best player in the world. I just got really lucky. I got lucky with the teammates that I was given. I got lucky with the enemies that I was given. And I don't think that luck has a strong place in a system or in a game mode like Trials of Osiris. So implementing a skill-based matchmaking system for Trials is something that I think Bungie should do, and it should help players to, who are lower level get pitted against players who are also low level. It should help high skill players really have those intense games where it's like, oh man, like I really have to sweat my ass off, so to speak. And I know that, you know, that's the other side of it. Lots of players, they complain about the sweat fest. They say, oh, well, you know, I don't like trials being a sweat fest, and I don't like to have to, you know, sweat my balls off every single game. And look, like, I understand that shouldn't happen in something like quick play. That shouldn't happen in something like Iron Banner. That shouldn't happen in something like, you know, Relic. But in trials is the place that you should have to sweat. And I hate saying that because, oh, I hate sweating for me personally, but I feel it. I do. I get that rush of adrenaline. You know, my palms get sweaty, my heart's racing. I'm sitting there like, okay, it's 4-4, you know, and I've got to make a move here because one of my teammates is down, but one of their teammates is down, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's where the fun comes from trials. Like, the fun in trials is not steamrolling every single game, getting 5-0. For me personally, of course, it's not steamrolling enemy teams 5-0, 5-1, stuff like that. Like, it is having those intense games. And that's why I don't play trials a whole lot, is because I can only take a couple of those intense close games before my anxiety starts just like shooting through the roof, and I gotta go play some like Minecraft to calm down or something. But yeah, I think matchmaking does need a place in Trials of Osiris to protect the lower skill players and to keep the high skill players' games fun and engaging. But the last topic, of course, is penalties for quitting, and not so much penalties for quitting, but why teammates are punished when they have their teammates leave the game. Why I'm punished if somebody else leaves the game. And what I mean by I'm punished, I mean, if the game starts and there's 2-on-3, the likelihood of a loss is like already jumping up in percentage by like 70-75%. Okay, and that's where it's coming from. And the sucky reality is, I don't know if there's a good fix for this, because obviously I think the easy thing to do would be to say, oh, well, let's you know, tell you what, when we have a teammate that leaves the game because, you know, we're solo queuing and somebody leaves the game, then the team who had the player leave, they are given a free pass. That doesn't count as a loss, doesn't take away their mercy, it doesn't ruin their flawless card and stuff like that. Like, optimally, that would be a great system to have. But the reality is, it would get abused. It would get abused completely and utterly, because you would have teams of 3 or teams of 2. Like, say my wife and I, we're playing trials. I want to get her to the lighthouse. We are loading into a game, you know, and we start playing in a game, and all of a sudden we realize that the enemy team is really good. Like, they are all 5-star players. They are about to kick our butts. So I say, you know what? Let me just leave the game. So I leave the game. Now it counts as a loss for me. Absolutely. Like, I get the quitter penalty, of the loss on my card, but it's not about me. I've been to the lighthouse multiple times. I'm trying to get her to the lighthouse. Now she doesn't get that loss counted as a loss, even though we are 4 rounds deep. I left the game because, you know, I didn't want her to like suffer that loss. I didn't want her to have to take that L, so to speak. That's where the problems would arise. And we could try to sit here and make up all these stuff. Well, maybe it could only apply for solo players, or maybe it could only apply for this, or maybe Bungie could determine a way to tell whether somebody has a network connection error, or, you know, they just leave the game maliciously, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, distinguishing between a network issue and somebody just leaving the game, probably pretty difficult. It's difficult to distinguish whether somebody pulls the plug on their Ethernet cable because they don't want to lose, or if somebody, you know, has a power outage that shuts off their internet, you know, and their power and stuff like that. Like, that's the reality of it. And it does suck, because I know that there are people out there that have had their cards ruined by either teammates leaving the game or by having, you know, internet connection issues and stuff like that. And that's incredibly disheartening. It's happened to me. I've been almost flawless. I remember a couple years ago, I was on my 6th win, and this is back whenever my skill level was a lot lower than I guess what it is now. But a couple years ago, I was playing in trials. I was on my sixth game, almost there. I was almost there. Or, I'm sorry, seventh game. I was on my seventh game. I was almost there. The game was, it was tough. It was, you know, we were at 3-3. Like, it was not a difficult game because back in the day you had card-based matchmaking. So if you were on your seventh win with no losses, the enemy team was also on their seventh win with no losses. Anyways, and of course this was back in the days of you had to have 3 people to play trials. And one of the people who I was with, they were LFG, by the way, left the game. Never heard from, I don't know if he left because he was mad about losing. I don't know if it's an internet connection issue. I don't know what it was, but he left the game somehow, some way, and we lost. And of course my card was ruined, and it was disappointing, but it happens. And it sucks when it happens, but it's one of those things that it happens. Bungie can't just allow players to have a free pass when somebody leaves, because it will be abused by other people. You will have players that get in their duos and say, hey, tell you what, let's play. If we're at 4-4, for example, or if we're at 4, you know, whatever, or if we're getting 4-0'd, I'll leave the game, and then it'll count you as a free win. Then you just come back in, get me, and we'll do that until you get your 7 wins to go lighthouse. Then we'll switch it around, and then I'll do it, and you leave every single time. Players are going to do that, and that's going to ruin the value of adept weapons, and it's going to ruin the meaning of having adept weapons. Let me tell you right now, for me, adept weapons, the trials weapons, none of them really tickle my fancy. Like, I think the weapon that I use probably the most, I don't even have an adept version of, it's the grenade launcher. I can't remember the name of it, the Cataphract or whatever. But the shaders that I get from Trials of Osiris, especially the one from this season, Vizier Regalia, man, that felt good. That is a good looking shader. I love having that shader equipped on armor, on weapons, all that stuff. And it makes me feel good about going flawless. I also had to fight my way to getting flawless. And granted, you know, I know I said it took me like 30 minutes, blah, 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 or whatever. Which I don't think it was the first time I went flawless this season. I think that was one of the subsequent times. But it's still like, I still had to fight. I still had to battle. I still had to, you know, sit there and in my head I'm going, okay, like I've got to play well, I've got to win. I didn't have this card in my back pocket of, hey, like I can have my teammate leave the game and it won't count as a loss, and woohoo, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't have that option. So it made the loot for me feel more valuable. It made the adept weapons that I got feel a little bit better, which I do use adept weapons on occasion. I just don't use them very often. Anyways, look, that's all I'm going to say about that. No, I don't think that it sucks. It sucks when teammates get punished because somebody leaves a game. But at the same time, I don't really think that there's anything that Bungie can do about it, even for solo players. And I don't think there's anything that Bungie should do about it, because if Bungie does do something about it, it will probably get exploited by other people, and yeah, that's not fun. But with that being said, I want to hear your thoughts on trials. You know, we've talked about these 3 things: solo queuing and freelance, matchmaking, as well as quitter penalties and teammate penalties, I guess is what we could call them. I want to hear your thoughts on it though. Like, do you agree with what I said? Do you think that there could be some changes maybe that I didn't talk about? Do you think that freelance should be allowed? Do you think that matchmaking is fine where it is? Like, just tell me what you think in the comments. Of course, if you like today's video, drop a like, helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content. And once again, guys, thank you for hitting 1,000 subs. Let's hit our next milestone at 1,500. Let's just set it at that. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. See y'all next time, guys. Bye for now.